Hello, and welcome to the Spiritual Sanctum of Light. This is one of our teachings that are outside of our regular Sunday service. We are going to look at St. Augustine's Christian doctrine. And this is a translation because this was written in the early days of the church. And we begin with the interpretation of Scripture depends on the discovery and enunciation of the meaning and is to be undertaken in dependence of God's aid. Now, this may suggest that you don't understand anything unless you go to God with it, but it's not quite that. What is being suggested here is that when you read, and in this case, when you read Scripture, or in all actuality, when you read anything that is spiritually oriented, you should take a moment and reflect upon it. Consider all that is questionable to your understanding. Don't just accept it because of the writer, the message bearer, or anything of that nature. Don't just accept it. Meditate on it. Prayer is reflection. So when you read that you should pray about it, or you hear someone say you should pray about it, what they're actually telling you is that take a moment, quiet yourself, and reflect upon it. And as you reflect upon it, meditate on it. And when you meditate, you are exploring yourself, your inner world, your inner self, because that's what meditation is. You are observing your thoughts, your actions, your past, your memories, and you are seeing how the teaching can be integrated. And this is where contemplation or consideration sums up the process. Because at the end of this process, you are considering your interpretation, not somebody else's, your interpretation. You must test it to see if it is correct, to see if it is true. And if you find it to be true, according to your reflections, your considerations, your explorations, your experience and such, if you find that it is true, then you must integrate it into your beliefs. Because if you do all of this work and then you throw it off to the side, it's a waste. You've wasted your time, your energy, your effort, not to mention the effort of the author putting these things, these ideas and thoughts down on paper for your benefit. So this is part of the process. Whenever you read something that is spiritually oriented, reflect upon it, meditate upon it, and then consider it. And if it aligns or resonates with you, make it part of you. And Augustine continues with, whosoever has, to him shall be given. He will give then to those who have, that is to say, if they use freely and cheerfully what they have received, he will add to and perfect his gifts. In other words, the divine. Who has to themselves that which has been given to them, the divine, the Father, will give more to those who have received this. So whoever has shall be given more, and more is given through the sharing of what one already has. It's the sharing, reciprocity. You see this in nature. When two animals, whether they are of the same pack or the same tribe, doesn't make a difference. When they share, both have more. Not only do they have more, but their disposition, their whole sense of being changes. And my interpretations, well, of course, they tend to be reflected in spiritual philosophy, and that's how I interpret these writings, is in a spiritual philosophical aspect, or you could call it the philosophy of internal reality, meaning your internal reality, how things fit together within you. And whenever external interpretations are required, such as this, I will refer to nature, as you heard. Because in nature, all truth begins in nature and is transformed through you. You take it in. It is a transmission. You take it in. You reflect upon it. Prayer. You consider how it might work in your life. Meditation. And then if you see value in it, then you work it into your belief. Consideration. This is a process. And in this process, when you share what you have, whether it is food, clothing, money, wealth exists in all forms. When you share that wealth, others are more likely to share it with you. Not only will they share the wealth that you have shared with them with you, but they will share the wealth you have shared with others. Thus, what you have given is not only received by them, but is continuously received by others. We have a term for this. It is called legacy. How people remember you. And keep in mind, Jesus alone did not change the world. No, Jesus shared what he had with others, and those others shared their interpretation. They reflected upon it, they meditated upon it, and then they integrated it, and they shared that with others. So they shared their experience of the teachings of Jesus, who shared his experiences of the teachings of his ancestors. So you can see how it moves about. When you give freely, that which you have that which you have given is continuously given. So as we continue with this, others are more likely to share what they have. When you share what you have, you become the example. And this is, a lot of times, this is despite your refusal to accept or to share what you have been given. Because if you refuse to share what you have given, they will share that too. So even if you refuse to give, it's not that they remember that and they hold it against you. It's they remember that and then they in turn refuse to give. So you are still sharing regardless of what you are still sharing regardless of your actions. And this is the way of nature. Every creature sustains every other creature through a variety of forms, actions, observations, what you say, all of that you share. And even death of the body, when it is required, or when something must be sacrificed, must be given. That's what sacrifice is, given. It is the way of nature, and consequently, it is the Father's way as well, because nature is merely the expression of the Father. And here's an example. Consider this. One of the times when Jesus taught, he gathered what food that they had to feed those who were in attendance. And Augustine writes that the loaves in the miracle were only 5 and 7 in number before the disciples began to divide them among the people. So that's 12 loaves of bread. But when they began to distribute them, though the wants of so many thousands were satisfied, they filled the baskets with the fragments that were left and had more. Now, physically, you cannot give away 12 loaves of bread and some fish and have more left over. It just doesn't work. The math does not support it. However, if you consider the aforementioned quote being, "Whosoever has, to him shall be given, he will give then to those who have." That is to say, if they use freely and cheerfully what they have received, he will add to and perfect his gifts. The loaves were gathered and they were freely given. Jesus and the disciples had 12 loaves of bread, and they used those 12 loaves of bread freely, giving it to those in need. And in return, they received more in the end. So you may wonder about this, but this is most likely what happens, because this is what I have seen happen or experienced what happens. As the baskets were passed around, at least as many who received gave, which means that someone may have taken something out and had extra of something else and put it in. And those like that, because not everyone travels, even then, not everyone traveled with no food to carry them through the journey. They would be miserly with it. They would ration it out. And in this particular instance, that ration that they had, they could have put that in the basket as they received something different in exchange. Reciprocity, the natural principle of reciprocity. As you give, so shall you receive. As above, so below. There's that reciprocity there. And as the basket came around, those who needed took out what they needed. Others put in what they didn't need because they had received. So when they gathered what was left over, they had more than what they began with. This is the idea. As you receive, so shall you give. As you give, so shall you receive. It's reciprocity. That's the whole idea. This is the demonstration of whoever has more will be given, because who has given becomes the examples for others to follow. Those gathered round Jesus at this particular time, they saw that he gathered all that he had, and probably in their eyes it was him who had this and gave it all away freely. In their eyes, that's probably how they interpreted this and how it was written to reflect that interpretation, when in fact it was all that they had. All that they had, and they gave it freely. Well, maybe not freely. I think there was somebody in there who grumbled, but I don't recall the passage word for word or anything else like that. But you can count on it, because it is human nature to grumble when someone has to release something that they are unwilling to let go. And despite that complaint as it was being released, they received even more. Now, this whole concept of reciprocity, in this particular example, it was, they gave, they received, all in one event. But it doesn't work that way, because as you give, it works its way around until it comes back to you. What you give today, you may not receive until much later. Days later, weeks later, years later. But the whole point is that when you give freely, more comes back to you. And if you don't believe me, you have to try it. They've done studies on this. When I was learning to invest, I was reading all kinds of books on investments, and one of them happened to have been by Susie Orman. And in this, she did a little study. She was an accountant or a financial advisor, and she looked at her records, and what she discovered was that in those records, those clients who gave to charity had more than those who did not give. It's not something that is easily understood, but it is something that occurs, because in our mindset, we see this transaction being today when this transaction is long term. Think of it like that. All that you do today is long term. It's a long term investment. When you give today, it is a long term investment that comes back to you at a much later time, usually with some amount of interest. Just take a moment, reflect in your life where something similar has happened, and meditate on it. Meditate. Explore. Look at this. Okay, I did this, and I ended up with this. Is it because of this? If you can make the connection, then you have to consider it, and you have to consider making it part of your belief system. Even those who harm others, they're still giving something away. What they're giving away is pain and anger and misery, works in the same principle that pain and anger and misery that you may inflict upon someone else is going to work its way through until it comes back around and it is inflicted upon you later in life. You have no friends on your deathbed. Why? Because what you gave was not something of value. What you gave was less than valuable. And I've seen this too. It's just something for you to consider, because there is no greater miracle than the transformation of another. If you can help in the transformation of another, it works its way back because you become transformed. And this is regardless whether you slap somebody around and step on them as you climb up the ladder, or you hold your hand out, you help them up, you brush off their coat and everything, and you hand them a hat. Doesn't make a difference. Either way, it still follows the same natural principle of reciprocity. I hope this was helpful for you, at least something that you can think about and consider. If you did enjoy this, take a moment, subscribe to our channel. There are links to all of this at our website, firstchurchofprayer.com. We invite you to add your voice to our inner circle on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. You can find links there to attend remotely. You can find directions there if you're in the Michiana area. We hope to see you. And until then, may you have a fruitful day. Thank you.